time, her claims have been discredited by other researchers, and these have been carefully documented by Freeman, 1983. Her determination to demonstrate the existence of these three anomalous permutations of sex and temperament led her to some strange interpretations of her observations. She argued that among the Mundugumar both sexes are violent, the men express it through murder, rape, and headhunting raids, while the women express it by serving tastier dishes than their co-wives. Among the allegedly gentle Arapesh, young men were not initiated into adulthood until they had committed homicide. Among the sex role reversed Chambuli, the makeup worn by men celebrates their killing of an enemy, and the aggressive women were frequently beaten by their gentle husbands. Anthropologists vocally encouraged reports of cultural difference rather than cultural similarity. Years 1984, and this no doubt affected the way in which field workers interpreted the behavior that they had witnessed. Critics often seem confused about just what is meant by human nature. Consider the following quote from Sandra Bem, 1993, pp. 21-22, as a biological species, human beings do not have wings, which meant that it was part of human nature to be unable to fly. But now human beings have invented airplanes, which means that it is no longer part of universal human nature to be unable to fly. Now the idea that sitting in flying machine 30,000 feet above the ground constitutes an alteration of human nature is an odd distortion of the concept. Evolution of wings might indeed have led to a radical alteration of human nature, but we have not evolved them. Has air travel in any way lead to an alteration in our physical morphology? Do we seriously suppose that airplane passengers show a different psychology or physiology to those who have not flown? It is equally hard to know what to make of Fausto Sterling's 1992, page 199 claim that there is no single undisputed claim about universal human behavior, sexual or otherwise. Presumably even the most ardent cultural relativist would accept that everywhere, people live in societies, they eat, sleep, and make love, and that women give birth and men do not. Arguments seem to arise when we move from basic universals to their specific behavioral expression. How everywhere women are the principal caretakers of children, the fact that there may be variation in how that task is fulfilled leads some anthropologists to conclude that mothering is not universal. Is as analogous to arguing that because people eat different food in different parts of the world, eating is not universal. Evolutionary psychologists do not argue for cultural invariance in the expression of evolved adaptations. As Tooby and Cosmides 1992, page 45 put it, manifest expressions may differ between individuals when different environmental inputs are operated on by the same procedures to produce. Bad politics. 25. Different manifest outputs. At a behavioral level, the expression of the mechanism may vary, but that does not question the universality of the generative mechanism itself. Fortunately, Donald Brown, 1991, trained in the standard ethnographic tradition, has documented the extent of human universals. List is astoundingly long, but here is a taste of the hundreds that he finds: gossip, lying, verbal humor, storytelling, metaphor, distinction between mother and father, kinship categories, logical relations, interpreting intention from behavior, and recognition of 6 basic emotions. Of special interest to the study of gender we find binary distinctions between men and women, division of labor by sex, more child care by women, more aggression and violence by men, acknowledgement of differences between male and female natures, and domination by men in the public political sphere. Now this last observation, that men predominate in positions of power, provides a nice example of the extreme reluctance of cultural anthropologists to acknowledge universals. In 1973, Stephen Goldberg wrote a book documenting the universality of patriarchy. He was inundated with letters informing him that he was wrong and pointing out counterexamples. Other feminists were more willing to accept his premise. C. Bem, 1993, Millett, 1969, Rich, 1976. Over the next 20 years, he carefully examined the available ethnographic documentation for each putative counterexample, and in 1993 authored a second book in which he was emphatic that no society had yet been found that violated his rule. There are societies that are matrilineal and matrilocal and where women are accorded veneration and respect, but there are no societies which violate the universality of patriarchy, defined as a system of organization in which the overwhelming number of upper positions in hierarchies are occupied by males. Goldberg, 1993, p. 14. Such a state of affairs is deplorable, but mere denial of the facts will do nothing to alter it. Women's engagement in the political arena will. Charge 4. Evolutionary psychology is used to naturalize and legitimize the status quo. Evolutionary psychology has considered a number of highly charged and socially relevant issues including infanticide, sociopathy, wife abuse, and rape. In these areas, feminists e.g., Fausto Sterling, 1992, have objected that such work opens the door to frivolous exonerating pleas in the criminal justice system. I beat my wife because it is in men's nature to experience extreme sexual jealousy due to internal fertilization and concealed ovulation. The misuse of scientific research by defense attorneys is doubtless widespread, but it is certainly not confined to evolutionary theory. Indeed, environmental factors are far more commonly implicated. Parental abuse and neglect, inadequate educational opportunities, and drug addiction are all used to mitigate criminal. 26. The Essential Woman, BIOPHOBIA, and the study of sex differences. Guilt and reduced sentences. The issue here is not evolutionary theory but the prevailing legal philosophy of responsibility and free will. His objection also charges that an evolutionary explanation of, for example, patriarchy will allow policymakers to view it as natural, and therefore benign. It is deeply ironic that evolutionary psychologists have been the ones to argue most forcibly against the naturalistic fallacy, the belief that what is natural is morally right or desirable. His is not a post hoc attempt to make their position politically correct but flows from the very nature of the theory itself. Natural selection operates as a sieve allowing some genetic variants to pass through and others to die. His sieve knows nothing of good or bad, kind or cruel, desirable or unacceptable. It does not result in progress in the form of the survival of better species or individuals. Humans have proliferated exceedingly successfully, and one feature which we possess is a large brain relative to our body size. It does not make a species with high intelligence better than one with low intelligence, although it did make it a useful adaptation for Homo sapiens trying to survive in a particular ecology several 100,000 years ago. If intelligence was, naturally, good, then ants and spiders would have developed an enormous cortex or would have become extinct, neither of which has occurred. It is vital to make a distinction between what we as humans hold to be morally desirable and what natural selection has retained as an adaptation. Malaria, tuberculosis, and death in childbirth are natural, but we hardly regard them as good. Indeed, we have poured enormous positivist scientific effort into their eradication with considerable success. Our vision of a more perfect world cannot be found in evolutionary theory, which tells us only about the selection pressures of the past, not about our moral aspirations for the future. Charge 5. Culture and technology have so changed the environment that we are freed from natural selection. Evolutionary psychologists hold that evolution has provided us with phytness tokens, desires, pleasures, aversions, and goals that mold our preferences and behavior. Teenagers do not attend discos in order to increase their share of the future gene pool, they go there because browsing the potential mate pool exerts an untutored fascination for teenagers everywhere. A teenage couple who have sex after such an event are not seeking to increase their reproductive success. If they were, they would not employ contraception. Consensual sexual contact is inherently pleasurable, evolution has seen to that, and they are simply enjoying that evolved pleasure. Natural selection worked to make sexual contact enjoyable because in ancestral environments contraception was not available, so sex eventually led to pregnancy and increased reproductive success. The principal aim of evolutionary psychology is to understand the origins and the parameters of these mental adaptations. Such adaptations. Bad politics. 27. Have not magically disappeared with the advent of new technology or social institutions in the past 100 years. But, some argue, the world today looks nothing like the environment of evolutionary adaptation (EEA). Population density is greater. Social and political structures are more complex. We live in parts of the world that would have been uninhabitable then. International conflicts, air pollution, and multinational companies dominate the world. At first glance, there is an enormous gulf between the hunter-gatherer societies in which humans spent 99% of their existence and the contemporary societies we now inhabit. But these changes have been wrought by the human mind, and this mind was adapted in the EEA. As Crawford 1998, page 291 points out, we have not created a world designed for individuals who can who choose mates indiscriminately, who have litters of offspring, who have fur to protect them from the cold, who make little investment in infants once they are born, who do not mind being cheated in a social contract, who do not value close relatives, and so on. Cultures everywhere value altruism, reciprocity, fairness, and in-group solidarity. Cultures devalue selfishness, cheating, theft, and in-group violence. Cultures which endorsed mass suicide or abstinence from sex would not last long. However, it is true that adaptations now engage with a range of environments that are richer and more diverse than those they evolved to deal with. Activity in the dopaminergic reward pathways of the brain feels pleasurable and supports our appetite for important adaptive behaviors such as sex and food. But these same dopamine receptors can be directly stimulated by illegal and addictive drugs. Today, some ancient adaptations have been recruited in the service of leisure activities. The pleasure that soccer brings to millions may derive from our natural fascination with intergroup conflict, with male-male competition and with the demonstration of young male strength and agility. The universal enjoyment of gossip is exploited in soap operas. Despite knowing that we are watching miniature representations of human beings as pixels on an electronic machine who are pretending to be people they are not, we still find our emotions engaged in the drama of these people's lives even though they are so artificially presented. The mind and body that we have today exist in their current form because we come from a long line of individuals who survived past puberty and successfully reproduced. Many did not. We are fortunate to live in cultures where medical advances have enhanced the survival of severely premature infants and have brought cures for diseases that would have been lethal in the EEA. We have seen significant increases in longevity in the past decade. Infertility treatment has become widely available, as has contraception. When medical and technological advances can be used to give and take life, we have created the 28. The Essential Woman, BIOPHOBIA, and the study of sex differences. Instruments of our own selection. We would do well to keep a watchful eye on those who exercise that judgment on our behalf. Bad science. Another set of objections has come from those who question the scientific status of evolutionary psychology. We begin with the most radical critiques from those who regard the scientific enterprise in general as androcentric and who accuse those women who engage in it as sleeping with the enemy. Our wrath is not specifically directed at evolutionary psychology per se but at any use of the hypothetico-deductive method. Charge 6. Evolutionary theory, as part of traditional science, fails to recognize that there can be no objective truth. Many feminists have objected that the very questions posed by scientists are laden with tacit political agendas and that the scientific method itself can never be value-free. Fausto Sterling, 1992, Harding, 1991, Hubbard, 1990, Keller, 1992. The solution they offer is for researchers to announce their politics at the same time as their results so the reader is made aware of possible bias in their data collection, analysis, or interpretation. Of course, this has the side effect of allowing readers to pick and choose articles in terms of the author's politics and to be prejudicially positive to articles that gel with their own ideological agendas. Fausto Sterling, 1992, page 212, for example, writes of the difficulty that she has in distinguishing between science well done and science that is feminist. She is also surprisingly honest about the double standard that she employs in evaluating data which is not congenial to her ideological position. I demand the highest standards of proof, for example, on claims about biological inequality, my high standards stemming from my philosophical and political beliefs in equality. Fausto Sterling, 1992, pp. 11-12. Theories that are not consistent with a feminist viewpoint often fail to achieve this high standard. Feminists are keen to promote high-quality research, but this aim is compromised by their inability to distinguish between feminist science and good science. Many feminist journals will refuse to publish data that are unacceptable to their ideological position. The state of affairs has already inhibited open expression of ideas by those who fear incurring feminist wrath and, if it continues, will seriously jeopardize academic debate. There is a more liberal possibility. Traditional scientific method is a cyclical loop joining theory and data via hypotheses. It is a system that requires explicit and coherent reasoning at the level of theory building, an honesty and clarity about the method and results of data collection but not about the ideological position of the authors. It also crucially depends upon the endeavors of many scientists working separately and together. The scientific system allows freedom. Bad science. 29. Of politics to individuals, is self-correcting. Unsupported hypotheses are modified or abandoned, and open replications can be undertaken by detractors as well as supporters. How hypotheses, or even whole theories, may be laden with tacit ideology. The data that they require for falsify cation are collected from ordinary people who have no axe to grind. Scientify method can be the antidote to hidden agendas. Charge 7. Evolutionary theory does not resonate with women's experience. Two strands of contemporary thinking have come together to create a new criterion for the acceptability of an explanation. It must refill women's lived experience. It must feel subjectively true. The strand, which I wholeheartedly endorse, is the feminist demand that researchers should address women's experiences, recognizing them to be potentially different from those of men. The second strand is the postmodern rejection of grand theory, feminist theory accepted, of course, which prioritizes qualitative description of experiences and discourses that are contextually and historically bound. Effectively replaces theory with subjectively interpreted description. Since there are multiple possible descriptions of any event and no objective criterion for deciding amongst them, the best one is the one that resonates with the feminist reader's own experience and intuition. Parenthetically, it should be noted that the rejection of any objective set of truths necessarily excludes men's oppression of women as a historical truth. His emphasis upon personal resonance has been endorsed by feminists who encourage women to transcend positivist empirical method and seek alternative ways of knowing that are true to their own life experiences. Belensky et al., 1986. But this personalized approach to knowledge places resonance with the reader above the truth, generality, or coherence of the argument. For many women, evolutionary psychology does not resonate with their own experience. They do not feel that parental investment impacts upon their emotions or behavior. It does not feel right that differences in gamete size could create differences between men and women's behavior or interests. But intuition is not a reliable guide to the quality of an explanation. Children do not feel as if their bodies are composed of 65% water. People do not feel that solid matter is made of atoms. Feeling right is equally controversial with regard to psychological truth. Psychotherapists can persuade clients that they are secretly in love with their father. Palm readers can persuade clients that they are destined for greatness. In an influential article, Nisbet and Wilson 1977 demonstrated that participants in psychology experiments perform no better than chance in guessing the causes of their behavior when these are manipulated in experiments. Although we have conscious access to the products of lower-order processes, recalling our mother's name or the ability to speak in 30. The Essential Woman, BIOPHOBIA, and the study of sex differences. Grammatical sentences. We do not have access to the processes themselves. We do not know how our memory or language production systems work, except by the formal knowledge gleaned by psychological science. Evolutionary theory is concerned with how the mind was shaped in the environment of evolutionary adaptation approximately 150,000 years ago. We cannot have any feel for what the selection processes were or even what it felt to be an early human at that time. What are available to us are the psychological products of evolution. We like the taste of sugar, feel sick in the first trimester of pregnancy, experience fear when we look out from a tall building, see three-dimensional images in stereograms, enjoy sexual contact, and feel anger when our child is threatened. Evolutionary explanations have been offered for all these experiences. There are many feminists working in the evolutionary sciences. They have misgivings about the way in which women have been systematically excluded in their discipline both as objects of study and as collaborators. See Hager. 1997. However, few evolutionary feminists want to see the abandonment of empirical techniques. Instead, they seek to identify the evolutionary problems faced by women but ignored by male researchers such as patriarchy, Hurdy, 1997, Smuts, 1995, or male infanticide of infants, Hurdy, 1981. Others highlight the selection pressures that operated specifically upon women such as the care of slow maturing, Altrichel Young Lancaster, 1991, or the infant's greater dependence on maternal rather than paternal survival Campbell, 1999. They believe that their work is important because it can illuminate the evolutionary basis of sexual inequality and, in so doing, complement mainstream feminist work to inform a more solidly grounded agenda for change. Evolutionary feminist research on wife abuse and male proprietary jealousy, on brutal techniques for increasing male paternal certainty such as clitoridectomy, infibulation, and claustration, on polygyny and the gendered inheritance of wealth are a few examples of how evolutionary theory and feminism can work together to improve the status of women. Other critics of evolutionary theory, far from wishing to see the abandonment of scientific method, argue that evolutionary psychology is not scientific enough. Charge 8. Evolutionary theory is tautological. In principle, this objection can be leveled at any functional explanation in the social or natural sciences. Some radical feminists argue that male-dominated governments allow the production of pornography in order to objectify women and to keep them in a state of fear about the possibility of rape. Th. is as a functional explanation. It seeks to explain why the status quo is the way it is. Th. Simple question, what is this for? Is the driving force of most scientific inquiry that goes beyond mere description or classify cation. When directed at evolutionary theory, the objection takes the bad science. 31. Form of allegations of the just a story, the invention of plausible but unverifiable stories about how an adaptation occurred. Blyer, 1984. In fact, the methods of evolutionary psychology have been clearly explicated by Tooby and Kosmides 1992, and others Andrews, Gangestad, and Matthews, 2002, Halcombe, 1998, Sherman and Reeve, 1997. Broadly, evolutionary psychology proceeds by 1. Identifying an adaptive problem that proto-humans would have faced in the environment of evolutionary adaptation. 2. Developing a description of the module that is suggested to have evolved in response to this problem, including the range of inputs that would have activated it and the impact of its outputs in terms of differential survival and reproductive success. 3. Formulating a description of the current environment and a map of correspondence between the ancestral and present conditions that allows specific hypotheses to be generated about the current activating inputs. And 4. Undertaking tests of these hypotheses which, where appropriate, allow comparison with alternative evolutionary and non-evolutionary accounts. An adaptation is identifiable by evidence of special design such as complexity, economy, efficiency, reliability, precision, and functionality. Williams, 1966. THEI, for example, is so manifestly and complexly suited to the function of tracking the environment and allowing an animal to orient itself that nobody could seriously doubt that it evolved to serve that function. Dawkins, 1986. The ability to interpret the mental states of others also evidences special design. It is fast, accurate, automatic, follows complex rules, rarely makes errors, and bestows obvious advantages on its bearers. Language also has these trademark features. But to make the techniques of determining an adaptation more concrete, let us take a different example. Let us posit for a moment that individuals everywhere prefer to avoid, rather than seek out, situations in which they are cheated or exploited. Universality is taken to suggest but not prove that the trait may have an evolutionary basis. The next step is to ask what purpose it might have served in the EEA about 300,000 years ago. The fossil record provides information about where we were living, on the savanna plains of sub-Saharan Africa, and roughly how, in small hunter-gatherer bands. We were highly social and our survival depended as much on regulating social relationships as on ecological pressures. We can posit that it would have been important to detect social cheaters, those who failed to repay altruistic acts. If we could not do so, we would find our generosity exploited in the service of someone else's reproductive success. Let us hypothesize that one module of the evolving mind might have been devoted to detecting cheats. Kosmides and Tooby 1992 made such an assumption and tested it on the Wasson card task, which goes like this. A person is presented with 4 cards, on one side is a number and on the other is a letter. The upturned cards read 32. The Essential Woman, BIOPHOBIA, and the Study of Sex Differences. DF37. THEY are then given the proposition, if a card has D on one side, it has 3 on the other, and the person is asked which cards they need to turn over in order to determine whether this proposition is correct. TH is a standard philosophical P not Q problem. THEY ought to turn over card D to verify the conditional and then a second card bearing a number that is not 3 to disconfirm the consequent. Most people find this task quite difficult. But then Kosmides changed the task slightly. The subject is presented with a cheater detection problem. THEY are told that they are a barman and that they must ensure that nobody under the age of 18 is unlawfully drinking alcohol. THEY have 4 cards before them. One side of the card tells them the customer's age 26 or 16 and the other side what they are drinking, beer or cola. As before, they are asked which cards they need to turn over. Most people rightly realize that if the person is 26 years old, it does not matter what they are drinking and ignore this card. THEY also rightly realize that if a person is drinking cola, it also does not matter what age they are. Correctly, they turn 2 cards, age 16 and drinking beer. THE identical problem when translated into cheat detection becomes easy. And it is not just the fact that the problem was made social rather than abstract. THE cheater problem also seems to be activated only when a rule of exchange has been broken. If we alter the situation to, if a person eats chili peppers then they drink beer, people seem as amongst as they were before because although the problem is still social, no rule violation is involved. THE environment of evolutionary adaptation has become a particular source of concern to some. We have no time machine so we cannot visit it and we must rely on archaeological and paleoanthropological reconstruction. Because we believe that savanna living was the lifestyle that shaped our species, there is a tendency to caricature the EEA as something akin to an African hunter-gatherer community. As can be misleading if we fail to recall that evolution is deployed over vast stretches of time and that different characteristics evolved during different time periods and conceivably in different ecologies. For example, humans' tendency to live in kin groups can be traced back over 25 million years to a common ancestor shared with other anthropoids. Meat-eating may have evolved about 2 million years ago. THE evolution of language is traced to a mere 300,000 to 100,000 years ago. Foley, 1996. THE were a variety of adaptively relevant environments. And every adaptation comes from a statistical aggregate of selection pressures spread over time. The environment presented the same problems over and over again with sufficient regularity to make a problem-solving adaptation a distinct advantage. THE uncertainty that must surround the details of life at the time of each adaptation does not preclude the generating and testing of adaptational hypothesis. If adaptations evolved, they are part of human nature and will manifest themselves today over a wide range of cultures given the appropriate environmental inputs. Some have. Bad Science. 33. Argued that the study of contemporary human adaptations will help to build a more accurate picture of the EEA. Tooby and Cosmides, 1990. Even if it does not, the status of current adaptations is not dependent on a complete account of their genesis. It is dependent on their ability to offer elegant and empirically supported explanations of contemporary human behavior. Adaptations exist as part of our nature, from the infant's moral reflex to our fear of heights, and a psychology that denies the available evidence in favor of a wishful world where humans are formless clay waiting to be molded by cultural practices may serve politics but not truth. However, tests of evolutionary predictions will never satisfy critics if they insist on moving the evidentiary goalposts. THE standards of proof that are required from evolutionary theory are far higher than those demanded for social environmental theories. THE interpretive constructionism espoused by many feminists is subject to the single standard of plausibility. Ironically, this is the very standard that feminists reluctantly agree that evolutionary psychology meets. Fausto Sterling, 1992, page 187, admits that, at one level it all seems quite plausible, and Bemp, 1993, page 30, acknowledges the consistent pattern of sexual difference and dominance that not only appears to exist across time and place but that a theory like sociobiology appears to so elegantly explain. Charge 9. Evolutionary theory is riddled with disagreements. THE modern synthesis brought together Darwin's 19th century insights about natural selection with our 20th century understanding of genetic transmission. Together they have inspired an ever-increasing body of empirical work that seeks to test and refine these ideas. In so doing, the modern synthesis has brought together biologists, anthropologists, geneticists, developmental and social psychologists, and neuroscientists who, for the first time, have a common language with which to communicate. Notwithstanding this remarkable integration, Fausto Sterling, 1992, page 169, asserts that arguments continue to rage within evolutionary theory. THE arguments to which she refers are the objections offered by Stephen Jay Gould, an ardent Darwinian, which have been greeted with delight by many critics of evolutionary theory. His critiques are not rejections of adaptationist thinking but proposed modify cations and cautionary admonishments to his fellow Darwinians. Strelny, 2001. First, a possible modify cation. Gould believes that the trajectory of evolution is discontinuous rather than smooth. See Eldridge and Gould, 1972. He believes that the normal equilibrium of evolving life is punctuated by dramatic events that select for new macromutations before the pace slows again. His claim is far from radical. There is no reason why evolution should proceed at a constant pace in periods of stasis when species were freed from dramatic. 34. The Essential Woman, BIOPHOBIA, and the study of sex differences. Environmental change were probably commonplace. Dawkins, 1986, Dennett, 1995. Failure to find evidence of intermediate forms of life that evolved and were extinguished in a matter of a few 100,000 years is not especially surprising. For a species to be identified as a unitary entity, some degree of stasis has to be involved. We would not even entertain the idea of a species, whether alive or extinct, unless all of its members shared common attributes over some space of geological time. Whether the emergence of new life forms happens, momentarily, as Gould proposes, largely depends upon one's definition of a moment. The punctuated equilibrium argument depends upon the scale on which one draws evolutionary change. Gould himself appears to recognize this and agrees that our theory entails no new or violent mechanism, but only represents the proper scaling of ordinary events into the vastness of geological time. Gould, 1990.